Welcome back, everybody, to another segment of Wednesday Wisdom on the Educational AD Podcast. We'll be right back with this week's Wednesday Wisdom guest, but as always, we're going to give our sponsors a shout out. Now, don't hit that fast forward button. These are all companies I used as an athletic director. They're all great companies, and I really recommend that you check them out. So take 3 minutes, listen to our shout outs, then listen to our Wednesday Wisdom guest, and then go and visit these sponsors. I'm telling you, you're going to be glad you did. Here we go. We want to say thanks to our good friends at Athletic Surveys. In my school, we use surveys for everything, for kids, coaches, and parents. And the information that would come back was almost always over the top positive. We also got to hear from those squeaky wheel parents and listen to their concerns and keep them from turning into something big. But having all of that positive feedback was just incredible, particularly when we were visiting with one of those frustrated parents, or anytime you had to meet with your principal or even your school board. Go to athleticsurveys.com. Let them create a custom survey that lets you take the pulse of everybody in your program. We also want to say thanks to Hometown. Hometown's changing the game with their suite of solutions for schools and organizations that include things like, they're still the number one digital ticketing, online ticketing platform. But how about fee-free fundraising, athletic website construction, and a whole lot more? Whether you're an athletic director, a head coach, or a school administrator, Hometown is making it easy for you and your school to save time, to raise more money, and to bring your community together. Go to hometown.com for more information. We want to thank Ohio University and their online masters in athletic administration. My assistant athletic director, along with thousands of others, got his master's through the Ohio program, and it was a great experience. It's very affordable, just 20 months, totally online. And while you're earning your master's, you're also earning 11 NIAAA leadership training courses at no extra charge. For more information, go to the Ohio University Online Masters in Athletic Administration. We'd like to thank Vital Signs Wall of Fame. If you're looking for a really cool way to display your school record boards for all the teams, for all the different events, or show off your school's Hall of Fame, go to Vital Signs Wall of Fame and take a look at their interactive touchscreen video consoles. You put one of these units in your gym auditorium, your gym lobby, your main school hallway. It's going to be a magnet for kids, for coaches. How about sponsors and parents? Go to vitalsignswalloffame.com. Don't forget to mention the podcast. That's vitalsignswalloffame.com. We also want to say thanks to Gipper. Go to Gipper.com and let their team help you become a social media marketing expert. It might just be a small social media post to celebrate a victory, or it could be an entire newsletter using one of their templates that's customizable with your mascot, your school colors, and more, to share with the community all the great things your department's doing. You'll find it all at Gipper.com. Don't forget to mention the podcast, Gipper.com. We want to thank Home Campus. Home Campus is a platform that you're going to use every single day. Things like scheduling, rosters, results. For me, the athletic clearance and eligibility platform alone is incredible. Go to homecampus.com for more information. That's homecampus.com. We also want to say thanks to our good friends at Snap Raise. Have you ever spent weeks and weeks with a fundraiser and been disappointed in the results? Well, those days are gone. Go to snapraise.com. We used it at our school with tremendous success. I'm telling you, it works. Go to snapraise.com. You can check out all their other great platforms. But if you're looking for a fundraiser, you just found it, and it's Snap Raise. We'd like to thank Huddle for their support. As a football coach, I used Huddle for years, but as an athletic director, I made sure that our school was a Huddle school, and our coaches just loved the tools that Huddle provided. Our student athletes loved the videos, and our parents loved the streaming, but there's a lot more. Go to huddle.com, join the 8 million users, and turn your school into a huddle school. We also want to say thank you to our good friends at Sideline Interactive, indoor score tables and video boards. Go to sidelineinteractive.com. You can schedule a live web demo to see their products in action. Probably one of the best purchases I ever made was our Sideline Interactive indoor score table. Go to sidelineinteractive.com. Schedule that live web demo today, and don't forget to mention you heard about it on the podcast. Welcome back, everybody, to another segment of Wednesday Wisdom on the Educational AD Podcast. Longtime listeners are going to recognize the name Melanie Redd. She is the official strength and conditioning consultant for the Educational AD Podcast. Has a tremendous background in strength and conditioning, works with schools and teams and individuals in Ohio and that general area. And we always love having her on Wednesday Wisdom. So, Melanie Redd, welcome back.
Thanks, Jake, for having me. It's good to see you again.
For listeners, recording this on May 7th, so it's going to be very timely as you listen to it. Melanie, you and I have talked about this particular segment, what you're going to share for a while, so I'm going to get out of the way and let you start. But what do you have for our listeners on this episode of Wednesday Wisdom?
Yeah, so this is something that, as we discussed, I've been thinking about for a long time. And so for the listeners, I operate a large scale strength and conditioning program for one school. I have other like smaller jobs that I do at just like teams here and there. And I work also a lot in the club volleyball space. And there's this common theme that I see arising as a frustration for kids, parents, and coaches. Over like the last 12 months, I've noticed it a lot. And that is this struggle of skill acquisition in whatever sport it is: soccer, basketball, volleyball, lacrosse, football, whatever. And as a person that is often both on the outside looking in, but also on the inside of these programs, there's something that I think is lacking in skill acquisition. And I think that that thing that's lacking is systems. I don't think that winging it is going to get us from point A to point B, right? So when I look at any specific team or a large organization, my question to myself is, what needs to be accomplished here? Like where do we need to get to, and how are we going to get there? How is the quickest way to get there? I love being super organized. And I love creating systems, like logistics and systems. Like that's my jam. And I realize it's not everybody's favorite thing to do, because there's a lot of tediousness that's associated with that. But just to give an example, so when I have somebody or a team that I've never worked with before, or right now we have lots of incoming freshmen coming into the weight room, there has to be a system in place to teach those kids the skills of the weight room, right? So lifting is a skill, sprinting is a skill, changing direction is a skill, deceleration is a skill. So we have all of these things that are in this program. That how are we going to teach these kids these skills? And one thing that I think is largely lacking in a lot of programs, and I don't think that anybody notices it, and it's not intentional, is the teaching aspect of their system. So my system, which I stole from Mike Boyle's Strength and Conditioning, is first we teach, and then we coach, and then we correct. Now that's a continuum, right? So you've got teach, coach, correct on that continuum. And my staff and I are sliding back and forth on that continuum on both an individual basis and a large, global basis at the same time. So does require a lot of multitasking. But generally what I'm seeing is a lack of teaching the actual skills, and a lot of coaches who are confusing teaching and coaching, right? So a lot of frustration goes into, okay, we've been practicing for months and this kid or these kids are not picking up these skills, and the coach is coaching the skills, and then they're getting frustrated that the kid isn't receiving the coaching. But what's really going on in a lot of these cases is the skill was never acquired in the first place. And you cannot coach a skill that you have not taught, right? So going back to teaching versus coaching, when somebody's in the weight room with me, the very first thing they're going to learn how to do is they're going to learn how to squat. Even if they've said that they already know how to do it, we have an introductory phase for every single kid has to go through a very boring movement pattern based program. Now, if they nail it and they're ready to, hit the ground running with other stuff, then that's fine. But what we do is we have a system around the teaching, right? So teaching is a part of the big system, but within the big system, teaching the skills has its own system. So there's like the macro system, and then there's the micro systems within each. I know, I stay with me. So if we're teaching a squat, for instance, that's the part where I'm demonstrating physically. And while I'm demonstrating physically, I am using verbal cueing that I've already established I like to use. I do not require my employees to use the same exact verbal cueing, but I never mind when they do, right? So we use the things that work. And if what works for somebody over here doesn't, work for me, that's okay. But we have to be consistent in that cueing with that kid, right? So I'm teaching, I'm demonstrating, I'm either using a dumbbell, I'm under a bar, and I'm walking them through all of the really important verbal cues. Within those verbal cues, I keep those to as few words as possible, 2 to 3 words for every verbal cue, right? Because the brain and the body are trying to adapt at the same time. So there's the intellectual learning, and then there's the motor learning, which we're trying to get to happen at the same time with a person whose brain is not fully developed. Not easy. Okay. So we keep it as simple. Sometimes it might sound like I'm training a dog. The cueing is that simple. But then until I've done that, I can't get to the point where I'm coaching the skill, right? So the coaching takes place where, okay, now it's time for this kid to give it a try. And I'm going to let them physically do it while I verbally cue them through with the same exact cues that I used. I'm going to verbally cue them through it while they're doing that movement or skill or drill or whatever, okay? So that's the difference, in my opinion, between teaching and coaching. Now, just because I taught it once doesn't mean that they've already learned it the first time they try it. Sometimes they have. Sometimes it's like if their body just does it and they got it. And then the cue or the response is, you got it. That's great. Keep going. Right. Sometimes they need a correction. So that's like the third part of the continuum of the system is the correcting. Right. So when it comes to a squat, for instance, that might be, I'm looking at everything from the floor up. I'm looking at their feet first, and I'm looking all the way up to what's going on with their head when they squat. So let's say their heels are lifting and they're dumping forward at the chest a little bit. I'm going to say, all right, I want you to do it again, but I want you to work on keeping your heels down, chest up. Right. And then I'm going to show them, maybe I have to show them physically one more time. So I go back to teaching. Now they're going to try it again. I'm going to use those verbal cues of the correctives, right? So I'm going to say heels down, chest up, heels down, chest up. I always say it twice because the first time they might have only heard half of it. So people will hear me often in the weight room use cueing phrases or cueing words 2 times in a row. This is just a part of the system that I have found works. And I'll do this with the whole group. Sometimes I do on command lifting where everybody's doing the same thing at the same time. And it's not bad for kids who are doing it perfectly to hear that cueing, right? It's just a reinforcement. So I think if coaches can just take what I'm saying today and maybe ask themselves, do I have a system? If you don't know the answer to that, you don't have a system at all. If your answer is yes, but you can't explain your system on the spot, then you don't have a system or you have a flawed system, right? So I guess what I'm asking is for coaches to kind of take a step back and look at, do I have a system? Does my system include the teaching of the skill? In my opinion, in the high school space, we should still be teaching skills through their senior year. They should still be developing the sport through their senior year. Does what we're teaching a senior look like what we're teaching a freshman? Absolutely not. We're probably doing a little more fine tuning, in that senior year. But I think if we're really going to do a better job in this country at getting kids to their full potential, we have to take back the responsibility of the skill acquisition process, right? And just because a kid played a sport in middle school doesn't mean that they learned the skills of that sport. So I think going back to skill acquisition and having a system around skill acquisition and how and systems around, like, how do we know this is even working, right? Because it's not always wins and losses that tell us if the skill acquisition is working. And that's specific to every sport, obviously, and positions within the sport. And that does get a lot more tedious for coaches. But I think, when I look at like the teams that I work with that are the most successful at skill acquisition and the most successful in terms of performance, those coaches have a really great staff of people that know how to coach, and also specifically their best teachers of the game are coaching JV. And so in my opinion, that is where, I think we need to just kind of like take some steps back in this country, because I hear this a lot from strength coaches, parents, kids who, are seeing this like thing happen where the kid's not learning the skill, the coach is trying to coach the skill that the kid hasn't learned, the coach is frustrated, the kid feels like a failure, and they feel picked on, and nobody even realizes what's happening, right? Like, it's everyone, it's just kind of like going over everyone's head. And so sometimes what a coach does is they think, oh, these kids aren't listening to me, they're not hearing my coaching, or they're ignoring my coaching. And it's literally just a matter, often sometimes kids are belligerent, don't get me wrong, I do understand that, but I think a lot of times the skill has been missed, then the coach is trying to coach it. Or I have also heard a lot over the last like 2 years, you're athletic, you'll figure it out. Now that to me is completely an unacceptable thing to say to a kid who's relying on, these coaches and these adults in the room to teach them something. I don't get to do that. I don't get to say, you look athletic and there's the squat rack and, figure it out. So it's easy for me to say that's not cool to say because I work in a different part of the industry. But, I also think there are things that we don't know how to teach as coaches. And that's when you have to make sure that you're putting a staff in place or getting the help that you need in order to be able to coach these skills. So I'm going to leave you with this one example and then I'm going to shut up. So some years ago, when I was assistant strength coaching on a program that already, existed, great program, it's the football team that I'm still with, to this day. There were hang cleans, power cleans, full cleans in that program. I could do those on my own, but I didn't realize until I had to teach an incoming freshman how to do them that I did not know how to teach how to do it. And I was struggling, like struggling more than the kid was. And I just was like, what is going on? Like I can't get this kid to do this. And then talk to my mentor, afterwards. And he's like, well, you don't know how to teach it. And I was like, oh, dang, you're right. I don't know how to teach this. And it's just was one of those technically difficult things to execute. And it's also really hard to teach. Sometimes my advice to a coach is to take it out of the program if you can't teach it, right? If you literally can't teach it, take it out. That's weight room, you know, stuff, not on the field stuff. Um, that was like my big, like, eye-opening moment that if I'm going to do this, if I'm going to be a head strength coach someday, and then obviously since then I've spun this into a whole strength and conditioning business where I'm consulting with, organizations and teams around the country. It was this, getting back to teaching and learning how to be a really good teacher. So, I did a course where there was an online component to lifts and drills, and there was also an in-person practical exam component to that. And I used the practical exam, which was a clinic first and then a practical exam. This is part of the Mike Boyle Strength and Conditioning, the certified functional strength coach. The level 2 is for athletes. And at the clinic portion before our testing, I think I must have done maybe 200 hang cleans over the course of 2 days. It was like 2 days of learning, 1 day of testing. Or maybe it was 1 day of learning, a day and a half of learning, a day, half a day of testing or something like that. Anyways, I was super sore. I think I was bruised up here from like catching it in the wrong place, but I got really, really, really good at doing the hang clean, which was a movement that I did from time to time, but I didn't really love it. So I personally didn't do it a lot. Incidentally, now I love it and I do it every week as much as I possibly can. But it was through that process of first learning how to do it and then also learning how to teach it was really like pivotal for me, not just with that one movement, but it made me reassess everything that I teach. And that movement is particularly demanding and technical. There's a lot happening in the micro movements of the one, macro movement that I really started to like assess. Am I coaching squat effectively? Am I coaching bench press effectively? And, I started like fine tuning and just kind of going down the list of all of the exercises and lifts and drills, and did the same thing with, change of direction drills and deceleration drills and sprint drills, and just like learning from other people how they do it and then tailoring it to my environment. And, kind of making it my own and making it work within the confines of the logistics that I work in. And, I'll leave everybody with this. I don't say this to criticize. I just think it's easy for us as coaches to miss things because we work in very chaotic environments at times. And sometimes you're just trying to get through a practice, or you're just trying to get through a lift, or, whatever. But these sorts of systems have actually helped me manage the chaos and reduce the chaos over time much better. It keeps me in control of the room when, in environments where things can go really haywire. And then ultimately, it also builds more efficacy with what these kids are doing. And therefore, they're feeling more supported, but also building the confidence along the way because they're learning a lot quicker. And I think if that sort of system can be taken and applied to the field, the court, swimming pool, the wrestling mat, like whatever environment you're working in. And I have had coaches, by the way, that I've worked with on building their strength and conditioning programs. And then I've taught them my system for the weight room. And they have, oh, I should do this with practice. I should do this when I'm teaching, volleyball hitters or wide receivers, routes or whatever. And they've taken that same system and applied it to that skill acquisition on the field or court. and have found that they get from their point A to point B a lot quicker and everybody's happier. And then when you can get to that point where your kids have acquired a skill, then we can get to mastering the skill, right? But we're leaving so much on the table if all we're getting to is acquiring, or if we're not even getting to acquiring. Do you know what I mean? Like like we've got to get to the point where at the very least kids are acquiring skills, and then we can think, okay, who here can master this? Who here can get really 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 good at this? And kind of work towards that. I just think everybody is going to be a lot happier. I'll end with this. There's a lot of places a sport coach can go to. You've got NFHS, I think, has some, sport specific skill stuff. I often look through Coach Tube. I don't know if people are familiar with Coach Tube, but I think that's a really excellent resource. My daughter plays volleyball, so I just pulled up volleyball on Coach Tube the other day, and I saw that. Uh, oh gosh, the new Nebraska girls volleyball coach, Busboom is her last name. Busboom Kelly, I think, is her last name. And she was at Louisville and is now coaching Nebraska, which is like, the mecca of women's college volleyball. And she's got content up on Coach Tube for like $25 for setters, hitters, passers, servers, and it's her system for teaching the skills of those, that sport. And I was like, oh wow, I didn't even know that like people like that were on Coach Tube. And I'm not saying college coaches are the be all end all. There's a lot of high school coaches who have figured out some phenomenal systems and are sharing that on platforms like that. YouTube is another good resource, but I think CoachTube is a little easier to find good content, because YouTube you have to sift through, the not so good content. But I would strongly encourage people, to do that. And if anybody is interested in talking to me one-on-one, I will do, 15-minute phone calls or Zoom calls for free. I don't charge anything for that. So, I just wanted to put that out there. Yeah.
All right. Wow. A lot of great stuff. And I guess just kind of going back to the beginning where you're talking about, having a system. I think strength and conditioning, and there's a ton of great strength and conditioning coaches out there. There's a ton, but I think more so than any other sport discipline, football, basketball, volleyball, you name it, I think it's one where I think the bad actors appear at a higher rate
Sure.
because they went through a strength and conditioning program as a high school athlete or maybe even college, and so they think that they know it all
Mhm.
more so than say volleyball or football coaches. And having that system in place, that organizational system,
Mhm.
foundational system. And I know you stress this because I see your posts all the time on social media. I know you stress the safety factor
Mhm. Yeah.
that I think is probably greater. There's a greater need for it in the weight room than in any
Sure.
other sport because those exercises that they're doing, if you're doing them wrong, can not only injure you,
Yeah.
you can get killed. So again, having
Yeah.
that safety background, that foundation, having the ability, as you said, to teach the skills, to teach the techniques, and you talk about we train a freshman different from a senior. Well, and this sometimes a senior will come to you and they've never lifted before.
Right.
They don't know how to do a squat. Forget alone a clean or a snatch. Uh,
Right.
Much more complex. Just like a
Yep.
kid comes to you and wants to throw the shot put. They might be a senior, but if they've never done it before, you've got to be able to, as a coach, as a real coach, you got to
Mhm.
be able to break that down and teach them
Right.
properly. Melanie, we're almost out of time on the segment. And again, you did a great job with your presentation. But if one of our listeners wants to find out more and want to connect with you, what's the best way that they can find out more from Melanie Redd and Melanie Redd Performance Training?
I mean, I'm on all of the social medias, and now I'm drawing a blank on what my handles are. I think on Twitter, I'm at coach_Mel. Facebook, you can just type in Melanie Redd Performance Training. And then on Instagram, it's Melanie Redd 1. Email is Melanie at mrperformancetraining.com. And it's not hard. It's not hard to find me. I'm probably posting too much on social
Oh, no,
media
not at
these
all. Your
days.
posts are great. Okay. And Melanie mentioned Facebook. If you're an athletic director, there's a number of athletic director groups out there. I think two of the better one's called High School AD, the other one's called Secondary School AD. Melanie will post in there, we post in there, and it's a great forum to ask questions about strength and conditioning and a lot of other things. So,
Yeah.
Melanie,
Yeah, I
thanks again.
actually
Oh,
think
go ahead.
athletic directors should ask their coaches what their system is for skill acquisition.
Mhm.
And the answer to that would be really valuable information in helping them guide their coaches towards, executing their duties as a coach better and saving time and, making people happier.
Oh no, absolutely. For all your coaches, not just your strength and conditioning coach.
Yeah.
If that's an area of expertise for you as an AD, help your strength and conditioning coach, get better. And if it's not, you need to educate yourself and make sure your coaches are educated.
Yep.
Melanie, as always,
Yep.
it's great to connect with you. Great to hear from you. Thanks for sharing your wisdom with our listeners,
You're
and
welcome.
all the best as we wrap up another school year and get ready for summer conditioning.
Yeah, let's go.
Okay. For our listeners, we want to say thanks to you and remind you that we upload the Zoom recordings of all of our interviews to the Education Lady Podcast YouTube channel. We do Wednesday Wisdom just about every week and just about every day. We try to share best practices and stories from the world of athletics. So come back and join us again on another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. Hope you have a great day. Hey, before we go, of course, we want to thank all of our great sponsors. And again, these are companies I used as an athletic director. I strongly encourage you to check them out. Gipper.com, Vital Signs Wall of Fame, Home Campus, Ohio University, and their online masters in athletic administration, Sideline Interactive, indoor score tables and video boards, Snap Mobile, particularly Snap Raise, Huddle, athletic surveys, and hometown. Please check out these great sponsors. You're going to be glad you did. We'll see you next time on the Educational AD Podcast.